herself. She to tears.
Yeah. All right. Can I just say this? In a world where everyone is freaked out by third-hand smoke, and you're not supposed to have soda pops that are more than 16 ounces, and we're worried about salmon that's raised on a farm versus, and like I said, it's all smoking, tobacco. Hey, let's ban e-cigarettes. How about the negative health aspects of being 150 pounds overweight?
Yeah.
Is anyone, or that's to be celebrated?
Pride and shame is one thing, but if you were to ask any doctor, would you want your child to be obese, overweight, chubby even, versus have a healthy body? Of course they would say they want them to.
I think the point that she's trying to make is we're coming to understand that you can't shame people into being thin. Or at the very least, you can't shame them into being thin in a healthy way. They can shove their fingers down their throat, they can take a ton of diet pills, but you're not going to be able to shame them into being healthy. It just doesn't work.
Right. And, well, sort of and sort of not, because I've seen plenty of instances where people did get shamed into just about everything that worked. But there's still a difference between not shaming somebody and then celebrating somebody who's unhealthy. We don't celebrate smokers. They're unhealthy. We don't celebrate whatever. People don't wear seatbelts. It's not safe. You know what I mean? Like, we don't celebrate people riding motorcycles with no helmet. Like, there's still this thing of, like, I need to be celebrated for who I am. Ironically, coming from the people who are freaked out over, like I said, they've invented third-hand smoke. Fracking is going to kill. Fire's going to come out of your spigot. Like all radon gas is seeping from the floors. There's environmental allergies. I mean, all the people that are Purelling the most are celebrating the hefty chicks the most. You'll die faster being overweight than you will be a smoker.
But are you truly worried about her health, or are you just exactly?
I'm saying it's hypocritical to go after third-hand smoke and then celebrate hefty chicks. They both have negative health effects.
Yeah, the scale goes from shame to pride with a nice zero in the middle. And while I agree that we probably shouldn't, I don't think we should shame people who are overweight, but I don't think we should celebrate it either. I mean, there's a healthy take care of yourself, but I'm not going to. All right. Plus or minus.
Anyway.
But if she's two-fisting a hoagie, I don't get fat by watching her do that.
No.
I might get a little cancer on me if somebody's blowing a cigarette in my face.
Yeah, but the big argument of, as a society, we all pay because we have to pay your health bills and for smokers, and we do all that. Well, it's the same with the two-fisted and the hoagie thing. Either way, I tuned in just at the moment where the hefty chick was telling me she never felt better about herself.
That's unfortunate. I think we can all agree.
She was crying. And listen, I don't know, and you guys tell me, I don't want to sound like a prick. I'm just saying, when did we all have to feel marvelous about ourselves? I mean, what I'm saying is feel marvelous about your role in life. Be a marvelous dad, be a marvelous mom, be a marvelous motorist, be a marvelous lover.
Marvelous motorist.
Hey, lover.
We're New York's best talk radio, HTLA Radio 1.
This program is intended for mature audiences only. If you have any homicidal or suicidal feelings, please consult a doctor before listening to this program.
Well, how about it, gang? Did you consult your doctor before listening to this program? I bet you didn't. So, enter and listen at your own risk on today's Special Edition Crash Talk. Yes, Crash Talk was thrust out of its regular time last night, 9 p.m. Eastern Tuesdays, as it has always been for, well, a lot of years. Yes, it seems, well... And, we're going to get on her case about that. Coffee and Cigarettes today is going to be post-empted, I guess you could say. It's going to be airing at 4 p.m. this afternoon, Eastern Time, New York Standard Time, whatever you want to call it. We had a little issue last night. somebody, not mentioning any names, of course, dumped a Starbucks sweet tea all over the PreSonus 2442 mixer in our studio last night, right as we were going live. So, yes, that's why the fizzled out, staticky, squealing death that you heard last night on Crash Talk, that's why that was. That'd be courtesy of Starbucks sweet tea. And, of course, we here at HTLA frown on Starbucks because we love our Tim Hortons. Yeah. But nonetheless, the show must go on, and thank you to B&H Photo in New York City for whipping over that replacement 2442 on such short notice this morning. That was very huge of you, and we muchly appreciate it here. Yeah, so the big show last night that didn't happen is the big show today that, of course, is now happening. And today on the show, what is that? What is that he's doing? Well, the title of the show is The Race is On. And it's, yours truly here taking another look, an in-depth look, if you will, at the reality of racism and indeed the reality of reality. You've got to know what that is before you can know what the other is. And all too often, in the world of race discussions, we get left out in the cold as far as what reality actually is. From detailed statistics today on black and Hispanic prison numbers versus whites, all the way to corporate America's stance on these issues, and all the way down to young black girls who apparently get suspension rates 6 times higher than white girls at school. This is a show you will be, or at the very least should be, talking about for some time to come. So hold on to your butts. It's time for Crash Talk.
HTLA Radio 1. HTLA Radio 1 in New York City presents Crash Talk.
Gentlemen, HTLA 97.3 FM in New York proudly presents rock superstar Crash Jesus.
Well, that's right. Welcome back to the big show, the Crash Talkin'. Yes, the race is on. And good afternoon if you're just joining us. 2:06 p.m. in the city today. The Wednesday, the 11th of February, 2015. And if you are a Crash Talk listener, which most of you no doubt are, you know we weren't on last night. Somebody thought she'd chuck around her sweet tea from Starbucks. All over that mixer. But fear not. Yes, thanks to the fine folks at B&H Photo in New York City, we were able to get back online here with a brand new 2442 from PreSonus, because we are a PreSonus broadcast studio. 29 degrees right now and clear in Central Park. Sun is shining, and it's not too bloody bad, I gotta say. Yeah. So yeah, we got to get rolling here with the show. It's a long one. Going to be 90 minutes or more, guaranteed. And yeah, so hold on to your butts. It's about to get straight in here. I should mention today, of course, that the one and the only Jenny McCartney is in the booth without Starbucks sweet tea today. And she's making the show go, so thanks to her. Also, of course, I do have to say, Tim Hortons, New York City. They've got 8 locations in the city, ladies and gentlemen, to serve those coffee and baked good needs. So what are you doing? Get down there with the rest and hang with the best. Always fresh Tim Hortons. There you go. We begin our story today, our show, I guess we'll say, with a recent news article from USA Today on the racial gap in U.S. arrest rates. Quote, staggering disparity. Yeah. Now, this one hit me as a kind of a topic kicker offer for today's show because a number of times, Crash Talk listeners will know that, of course, I have done a number of shows on the racial topic and subject, and not the least of which, of course, the happenings in Ferguson, Missouri last year, in the end of the summer there. Yeah, and it just continues on and on. Police brutality, all that good stuff. Police officers killing unarmed black men, etc., etc. Well, all of this, as you probably know, rubs me the wrong way because, of course, you know, we have police to enforce laws. And we have laws in place to control a society, not to control white people or black people or any other kind of people. Those laws are actually in place to control all people. Nobody is supposed to be immune. And when there are indications that somebody is, then there's a real problem, I would say. But no, this story today is, well, again, focusing on arrest rates in the United States with racial statistics. And I thought I would open up with this, move into what some of corporate America's CEOs are saying about the issues, and indeed look at the issues further back, yes, going back to our kids, with a recent study about black youth in school and suspension rates versus whites, etc., etc. Now, we need to qualify this before we get into the show here. All these statistics, I mean, let's be fair, you can get statistics to pretty much support any claim or position. The interesting thing about this, however, is that everybody seems to leave out the fact that you have a situation where you either have people who are breaking the law, who are committing crimes. Oh, wait, no, that's everybody in those statistics because that's how you end up in jail. Well, let's not forget that. When it comes to radically lopsided arrests, the most remarkable thing about Ferguson, Missouri might just be how ordinary it actually is. The police in Ferguson, which erupted into days of racially charged unrest after a white officer killed an unarmed black teen, arrest black people at a rate nearly 3 times higher than people of other races. At least 1,581 other police departments across the United States arrest black people at rates even more skewed than in Ferguson. A USA Today analysis of arrest records shows that includes departments in cities as large and diverse as Chicago and San Francisco, and in the suburbs that encircle St. Louis, New York, and Detroit. Those disparities are easier to measure than they are to explain. They could be a reflection based on policing, on biased policing. They could just as easily be a byproduct of the vast economic and educational gaps that do persist across much of the USA. Factors closely tied to crime rates, in other words, experts said that the fact that such disparities exist does little to explain their causes. That does not mean, of course, that police are discriminating, but it does mean it's worth looking at. It means you might have a problem and you need to pay attention. This from the University of Pittsburgh's law professor David Harris, a leading expert on racial profiling. Whatever the reasons, the results are the same. Blacks are far more likely to be arrested than any other racial group in the USA. In some places, dramatically so. At least 70 departments scattered from Connecticut to California arrested black people at a rate 10 times higher on average than people who are not black. Something needs to be done about that, says Ezekiel Edwards, the head of the ACLU's Criminal Law Reform Project, which has raised concerns about such disparate arrest rates. In 2014, we shouldn't continue to see this kind of staggering disparity wherever we look. The unrest in Ferguson was stoked by mistrust among black residents who complained that the city's police department specifically had singled them out for indeed years. For example, every year, traffic stop data compiled by Missouri's Attorney General showed Ferguson police stopped and searched black drivers at rates markedly higher than whites. A grand jury is considering whether Officer Darren Wilson would face criminal charges. Yes, and they did, and ultimately decided no, he didn't, right? Well, these tensions are not new. Nationwide, blacks are actually stopped, searched, and arrested and imprisoned at rates higher than people of other races. A USA Today analysis using arrests reported to the federal government in 2011 and 2012 found that those inequalities are far wider in many cities across the country, from St. Louis to Atlanta to Dearborn, Michigan. This takes us to a story in Dearborn, actually. A dozen people stood or slumped on benches before sunrise at Dearborn in a recent morning, waiting for officers to unlock the doors of the 19th District Court, where they had been summoned to answer traffic citations and petty criminal charges. Almost everyone who lives in Dearborn is white, including a large population of Arabs, oddly enough. Almost everyone waiting in the morning was black. You see who's going in there. I guarantee they don't live here, Lawrence Wynn, who is black, said, looking at the line outside the courthouse doors. Most days, Wynn said he detours around Dearborn on his way home from his job at Suburban Auto Plant. It makes the journey half as long, but I'd rather do that than have to come through Dearborn at night, he says. Dearborn police officers and officials say that's simply not true. The city's police chief, Ronald Haddad, said the arrest rates are skewed because many of the people his officers arrest don't live in the city. They're picked up at the shopping mall on their way to work or simply when they're driving through. Some are detained by private security officers before police even ever arrive, meaning police would have no chance to single them out, making a choice to arrest them. Haddad said it's unfair to measure his officers' work against the city's demographics. We treat everyone the same, he says. More than half the people Dearborn police arrested in 2011 and 2012 were black, however, according to reports that were submitted to the FBI. By comparison, about 4% of the city's residents are black, and as are about a quarter of the people who live in metropolitan Detroit. Over those 2 years, the department reported arresting 4,500 black people, 500 more than lived in the city. As a result, the arrest rate for blacks compared with the city's population was 26 times higher than people of other races, but it's been qualified with the fact that these people aren't from the metropolitan area. There is a disparity. We feel like it's racial in a lot of cases, says Brian Allen, who said he's planning to move his family out of neighboring Dearborn Heights as soon as his youngest daughter graduates from Dearborn High School. Allen and his wife, Shelley, said they have their own reasons to be mistrusting. 7 years ago, after Dearborn police shut down a party at a local banquet hall that got out of hand, officers brought their daughter and 3 other black teens to the police station. A white friend came with them because she had planned a ride home with the girls. What happened next became the subject of a federal lawsuit. The girls charged that the officers took the white teen to the lobby to call her parents, but brought the 3 of the black teens to the back of the station where they were locked up and searched. When one of the girls asked why they were being brought to the back doors, one of the officers replied, quote, "Trash in, trash out," according to court records. None of the girls were actually ever charged with a crime, and the suit was ultimately settled out of court. Well, now we move to large gaps with no easy answers. To measure the breadth of arrest disparities, USA Today examined data that police departments report to the FBI each year for each agency. They compared the number of black people arrested during 2011 and 2012 with the number who lived in the area the department protects. The FBI tracks arrests by race. It does not track arrests of Hispanics. The review did not include thousands of similar or smaller departments or agencies that serve the area with only a small black population. Also, it did not include police agencies in most parts of Alabama, Florida, Illinois, because those states had not reported complete arrest data to the FBI. The subsequently remaining statistics that the review showed were that blacks are more likely than others to be arrested in almost every city for almost every type of crime. Nationwide, black people are arrested at higher rates for crimes as serious as murder and assault and as minor as loitering and marijuana possession. Arrest rates are particularly lopsided in some pockets of the country, including St. Louis, Missouri suburbs near Ferguson. In St. Louis County alone, more than 24 police departments had arrest rates more lopsided than Ferguson's. In nearby Clayton, Missouri, for example, only about 8% of residents are black, compared with about 57% of people that are of the people that the police arrested, according to the city's FBI reports. Clayton Police Chief Kevin Murphy said in a prepared statement that Ferguson has laid bare to the fact that everyone in law enforcement needs to take a hard look at how we can better serve our communities and address any disparities that have existed in our departments for too long. And deep disparities show up even in progressive university towns. Yes, police in Berkeley, California and Madison, Wisconsin arrested black people at a rate more than 9 times higher than members of other racial groups. Madison Police Chief Michael Koval said that most of the arrests happen in the poorest sections of the city, which are disproportionately black, and where some residents have pleaded for even more police presence. Still, he said, I think it would be remiss to suggest that the police get out of this whole thing with a free pass. We have constantly been doing the introspective look at who we're hiring and how we're training. Arrest rates are lopsided almost everywhere. Only 173 of the 3,538 police departments that were examined arrested black people at a rate equal to or lower than other racial groups. Now, Philip Goff, president of the University of California, Los Angeles Center for Policing Equity, said such comparisons are seductively misleading because they say more about how racial inequities play out than what actually causes them. Yeah. Those disparities are closely tied to other social and economic inequities, he said, and like most things that involve race, they defy simple explanations. There is no doubt a significant degree of law enforcement bias has an engine for this, but there's also no controversy that educational quality and employment discrimination lead to this, he says. It's not an indicator of how big of a problem there is with the police department. It's an aggregator of what's going on in the community. Still, he said, there is some level of disparity that is, of course, a warning sign. Whatever the causes, Harris said that such pronounced disparities have consequences. Believe me, the people who are subject to this are noticing it, and they're noticing it not just individually, but as groups. It gets talked about, handed down, and it sows distrust of the whole system, he says. Yeah, so there we go. We're going to go for our first 2-minute commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get a little bit more into Detroit and some fighting. There's some fighting words going on. So we'll be back in 2 minutes, gang.
And you are listening to Crash Talk with Christopher John Taylor, a.k.a. Crash Jesus, on HTLA Radio 1, New York.
What if there was a coffee that was sourced from some of the world's most renowned growing regions, abundant with rich, fertile soil? What if this coffee was picked at the perfect moment, then packed meticulously and shipped carefully to be roasted under the watchful eye of coffee masters? What if it was expertly blended, ground, and sealed, ensuring maximum flavor and freshness, then brewed in small batches and always served fresh within 20 minutes, just the way you like it? Now, what if this coffee just happened to be the coffee you already know and love? Tim Hortons. Always fresh. Always great tasting coffee.
You walked into the hotel as a 5. But when she saw the room, you turned into a weird 7. When she saw the rooftop pool, you went to 11. You two should probably get a room. Oh, that's right. You already did. At Planet Earth's #1 accommodation site, Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
Some said the U.S. has lost its innovative power. We said America is lighting the way as the innovation nation. Singular insights. Superior execution. That's the power of global connections. Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Voted top global research firm 2011, 12, and 13.
When we arrived at our hotel in New York, the porter was so incredibly careless with our bags. And the room they gave us, it was beautiful. A broom closet. But the worst part was the shower. My wife drying herself with the Egyptian cotton towels. Shower curtain defined that whole vacation for her. Don't just visit New York. Visit TripAdvisor New York.
With millions of reviews, a visit to TripAdvisor makes any destination better.
The hot new accessory, brows that wow. New from Maybelline, New York, it's Brow Drama, our first sculpting ball brush with tinted gel. Just sweep, then sculpt for bolder, sculpted brows. New Brow Drama. Get the look at Maybelline.com.
Maybe it's Maybelline. We're New York's best talk radio, HTLA Radio 1.
You know who they are. That's right. HTLA Radio 1 New York. You got tuned to Crash Talk here on a special Wednesday presentation of Crash Talk, 2:24 p.m. Eastern right now in the big city. 32 degrees Central Park. It's warming up. Sunny. It's warming up. It's all good. I'm liking it. So welcome back to the show. Of course, we got the one, the only Jenny McCartney in the booth, pushing those buttons, making us go. We've got the Crash Talk kids are in the house too, so don't you worry about them. They're here. So we're talking the race wars. Yeah, the Ferguson, the disparity, the police, the man, Black Lives Matter, all that good stuff. Because you know they do, don't they? Well, wait a minute. I actually have a question about that. If Black Lives Matter, why do they need a T-shirt? Well, just think about that for a minute. I'm not saying this stuff because I'm, the next leader of the KKK. I'm not racist at all. I prefer to value people based on, their contribution to society as a whole. Let's see, what else? Well, their education level. Their personal growth levels, When was the last time that anybody in this country was looked at statistically for their personal growth level? Yeah. Seems to me like that would be maybe a little more important. But I guess I'm kind of special and just not all there in the head or something. Well, Dearborn is the birthplace, of course, of the modern auto industry. Yeah, mostly white and Arab suburbs snugged into the southwest corner of Detroit, the poorest and blackest of America's major cities. Its border was along stark racial divide until 1978. The city was presided over by Mayor Orville Hubbard, who said he favored segregation and boasted to newspapers that he would use the instruments of government to keep blacks from moving in. He had to keep Dearborn clean, and that quote was actually emblazoned on the city's police cars. Our history is not always something we can be proud of, but we've learned from our mistakes, says Police Chief Haddad. Dearborn's police chief said it's unfair that we have to keep fighting this ghost. Dearborn today is different, he said. The police force has worked to build ties with the city's large community of Arab immigrants. Well, there's another mistake and another crash talk. We'll get to that later. Its officers have cameras in their cars and microphones on their uniforms. Soon we will start wearing body cameras too, thanks to the president's latest initiative. And the use of force has plummeted in recent years, and so have civilian complaints. Haddad said most of the department's arrests come after traffic cops in the city's busy arteries or at the mall, one of the large shopping centers closest to Detroit. Many of the people his officers arrest live in Detroit, a city beset by poverty, violent crime, and a faltering school system, and are passing through to work or shop. And he's got that right. I don't know if any of you have been in or around Detroit lately, but it's a war zone. It looks more like Syria than Detroit. But what are you going to do when you live in that Detroit shoe, huh? Still, allegations of discrimination have persisted there for decades. The local NAACP branch accused Dearborn police of singling out blacks for traffic stops in 97. Civil rights lawsuits alleging excessive force and officers using racial epithets have piled up too, though the number of such compliments has fallen sharply in recent years. Yes, well, and there's a lot of storied history, but I think a lot of that is either false or times have changed, says Greg Algier, who retired from Dearborn's police department this summer after 22 years on the force. There's no one really getting targeted for their race, he says. But in suburban Detroit, there is also little doubt that blacks are far more likely to face arrest than people of other races. For example, police in Livonia, another Detroit suburb, arrested blacks at a rate of 16 times higher than others. In neighboring Allen Park, it's 20 times higher. Not even kidding. Yeah. Our numbers are what our numbers are. Our officers aren't being told to look for any particular demographic. We come across what we come across. Allen Park Police Chief James Wilkowitz said Allen Park has 2 interstate highways and a large retail complex not far from the edge of Detroit, and many of the people in the city's police arrests live somewhere else. In some ways, Dearborn has become an odd place to hear such complaints. Its police department won civil rights awards this year. Haddad is the state's first Arab-American police chief, and among the most significant lawsuits over policing, there is a complaint that county sheriff's deputies didn't do enough to protect a group of white Christians who were protesting in an Arab festival in Dearborn. Still, Haddad acknowledges the accumulated mistrust. There are people who feel that way, and they have cause to feel that way, he says. We shouldn't be defined by one bad episode. Now, Dearborn has a history of those too, however. Yes, the bad episodes. On Father's Day in 2008, for example, 2 Dearborn officers arrested a diabetic man who had been pulled over by the side of a freeway. The man, Ernest Griglin, 59, was on disability from Detroit's school system after he hurt his ankle helping a special education student off the bus. An Allen Park police officer stopped Griglin, who was black, after seeing him climb out of his car in the middle of the road. She wrote in a report that she thought he was upset. Doctors later concluded, of course, he was having a diabetic episode, a sudden drop in blood sugar that relatives said could make him seem dazed or drunk. All right, well, before we go on any further here, kind of important to know, police officers generally don't know you personally. They certainly don't know your medical history, and they don't know anything else than what you present to them. If you happen to be having a diabetic episode, but you seem dazed or drunk, the police officer is trained and will follow through on that training to treat you as such. Why would we rely on police officers to handle medical situations like that? We wouldn't think that, would we? They're not doctors, they're not nurses, and they're not medics. They don't even drive an ambulance. They're police officers. I think if an individual seems dazed or drunk, chances probably are that they're dazed or drunk. Black, white, or otherwise, doesn't matter. Well, the 2 Dearborn officers arrived moments later. One, Richard Michalski, wrote that officers were afraid Griglin might have a gun in his waistband, so they guided him to the ground and wrestled him into handcuffs. Well, the gun turned out to be an insulin pump. Witnesses remembered it differently. One, Yolanda Lipsy, testified in a deposition that the Dearborn officers threw Griglin to the ground and just started beating him. They were beating him up, quote. Yeah. So there's that. But, look at the name. All right, Yolanda Lipsy. And what's her color? Well, she's black. You guessed it. When she saw her husband, Pam Griglin thought he had been in a car accident. His clothes were all torn and dirty and looked scuffed. He He had a large knot on his forehead, and it was like the size of a golf ball, and he had what looked like boot prints on his face, she said. I just couldn't believe it. And he said, "They beat me, Pam." Griglin complained that his head hurt. Then he said he could not see. Well, that was the last time my husband spoke to me, Pam said. He spent the next 11 months in a coma and finally died in 2009. The medical examiner listed his cause of death as bleeding in his brain caused by blunt force trauma, alleging the injuries almost the year previous. Dearborn settled a lawsuit brought by Griglin's family. The department was reprimanded, and both officers were reprimanded as well, turning in their use of force reports late. Mikulski later resigned after he was charged with assault and brandishing a firearm during an off-duty traffic incident. Separate from this, he declined to comment. The Dearborn policemen seem like they're kind of a little rougher with the black community, Pam said. My husband was a good man, a hard worker. He took care of his family. He had a diabetic episode, and they thought the worst. Thought he was drunk. Thought he had a gun. Black man in a Cadillac. They thought the worst, she said. Now, of course, this is kind of the funny thing, people, isn't it? We entrust police to enforce our laws and protect the public. Well, enforcing the laws, let's take a look at the laws for a second. Most of them, it can be said, are laws against crimes that, well, you'd have to expect pretty much the worst case scenario from most people to even have them break those laws. Bank robbery, assault, murder, rape, the list goes on, doesn't it? I think it's absolutely justified for police to be thinking the worst all the time. And I know this because I attended the police academy myself in 1999. I can speak to their training, and I can certainly speak to the expectations of the general public when it comes time for you to get in that car and go out and enforce those laws. But what does that have to do with the whole race thing? Is it a race thing or is it a crime thing? Is it an education thing? Well, let's take another look at maybe some other cross-sections that might help us figure this out. We're going to go for our second commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you about Starbucks CEO. Yes. And no, not just because his lovely beverage destroyed our mixer last night. No. I'm going to tell you about the Starbucks CEO who went out and holds frank discussions with his employees all across the corporate ladder, specifically about race, how it pertains to their business, and what he's learned from that. Yeah, we'll be back in 2.
And you are listening to Crash Talk with Christopher John Taylor, a.k.a. Crash Jesus, on HTLA Radio 1, New York.
Good morning. Welcome to Tim Hortons Cafe and Bake Shop, where fresh always tastes better. What can I make you this morning?
How about our new flatbread breakfast paninis? Made fresh, just for you, with your favorite breakfast ingredients on maple or multigrain flatbread, then grilled to hot, melted perfection. Just $2.99. Who couldn't warm up to that?
Tim Hortons Cafe and Bake Shop, where quality really does meet value.
Fourth down, Coach. What do we do?
I'll tell you what we do.
I want you to go on the field. Look for anyone with an O.
Let's kill them with kindness. Jimmy, I want you to make balloon animals. Tyler, make little tea cozy, something fun.
Are you okay?
We will win this for Mother Russia!
Coach, eat a Snickers.
Why is that, Chief?
You get a little loopy when you're hungry. Better?
Better.
Now let's go for it!
Go get them, guys!
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
You walked into the hotel as a 5. But when she saw the room, you turned into a weird 7. When she saw the rooftop pool, you went to 11. You two should probably get a room. Oh, that's right. You already did. at planet Earth's #1 accommodation site, Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
The hot new accessory, brows that wow. New from Maybelline, New York, it's Brow Drama, our first sculpting ball brush with tinted gel. Just sweep, then sculpt for bolder, sculpted brows. New Brow Drama. Get the look at Maybelline.com.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Some said the U.S. has lost its innovative power. We said America is lighting the way as the innovation nation. Singular insights, superior execution. That's the power of global connections. Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Voted top global research firm 2011, 12, and 13.
We're New York's best talk radio, HTLA Radio 1.
You know, it's true. We are. Talk, and more talk. That's what we got rolling here today. 32 degrees still in Central Park. Nice and sunny. Everybody's out walking their dogs or whatever they do in Central Park. I guess the minorities are committing crime. Huh? That's right. We got the one, the only Jenny McCartney in the booth today for us, pushing the buttons, making us go. She's gearing up, too, for coffee and cigarettes today at 4 p.m. Eastern. Moving it back an hour because of my Fat Talk show here. So there you go. And, yeah, we're talking race wars today. Yeah, we're talking all kinds of stuff that's not so black and white. And we're talking about the people who are doing the bitching. We're talking about the reality of it all. What's going on out there? And how are we ever going to come to the bottom of that when people can't get past their own emotions? Yeah. Yeah, you heard me. I mean, think about it. What were all those people doing in Ferguson, Missouri? Were they just sitting there holding signs, peacefully going about their business? No. They were mad. They were angry. They were talking about slavery and slave owners. They were talking about the man whipping us. They were talking about the man hanging us from trees. Yeah. Oh, I'm not kidding. They were. And I don't know about you. I don't own a cotton plantation. Never did. Neither did my mom or dad. Neither did my grandparents or indeed their grandparents. Did not happen. And anybody I've ever met, which is a hell of a lot of people, anybody I've ever met, not a single one of them could old Crash Man here find owned a plantation and owned slaves. Nope. But yet, what were we faced with this past summer? All that gets thrown in our faces. Well, why? We didn't do it. You want to talk about politically correct? You want to talk about PC-ism? You want to talk about equality for all? You want to talk about what? Black Lives Matter? Well, put this shirt on. Black lives don't matter one iota more than any other lives. Now stick that in your equality PC computer and calculate the freaking math on that. Not a single one of you black people out there were ever hung from a tree, were never whipped, were never owned by the man, and were certainly never originally sold out by your own people. Yes. We don't like to teach history in America anymore. They don't teach the Second World War, so I guess we're doomed to have another Hitler. They don't teach Vietnam. Oh, no, that's bad. We can't teach that. Kids might get the wrong idea. They might take that aggression and that warring for, oh, what? Human nature, you might say? Yeah. Well, I call up a whole panel of psychiatrists that would absolutely 100% unequivocally agree with me on my summation of the human condition. And since we're all human and we're all equal, take those shirts off, by the way, we got to be doing away with the Black Lives Matter thing. We got to be looking more at the real underlying issues. And no, it's not just a bunch of pissed off white cops in certain cities across the great country. No. Sorry. Police enforce the laws. It's their job to seek out criminals, find lawbreakers, and arrest them and detain them. And yes, if need be, beat them. This whole idea that our inmates and criminals all across this country should be afforded any kind of rights, to me, is laughable. If you can't abide by the laws of the country, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. And we're not going to kick you out of the country because you're American, so we'll put you in here. Enjoy. But everybody forgets that, and I don't know why. All I ever heard about Ferguson was, Officer Otis, whatever his face is, who shot down an unarmed black teen. In court testimony, that black teen was a huge bodybuilding, weightlifting tank of a man. Yeah. And that man, after trying to evade the officer, after reaching into the officer's SUV, wrestling him for his gun, to obviously what? What was that black man or teen going to do with the officer's gun? Do you think he was just going to put it in his belt and act all homie G? You've got to think about things here, people, before you just react to them. Wow. Really? Yeah. Nobody ever brings that up. And hey, is it my fault that the idiot decided to go into a store, grab a handful of cigarillos, which maybe cost $10, and think he was all that and walk out and walk down the street, only to be stopped by the police after the store owner obviously called in the crime? Shouldn't we be kind of laughing at the idiot who did that? And then that same idiot who subsequently reached in that SUV, wrestled a police officer for a firearm, which is a lethal weapon, and then ultimately run away, then ultimately turn and charge the officer after the officer gave pursuit, and now we want to hang the officer. Why is that? Cop's doing his job. Internal Affairs verified it. The grand jury agreed with that. What's the problem? Oh, well, gee, Crash, there's a problem. Black Lives Matter. Yeah, okay, so Black Lives Matter. So what? So does the cops. So does all the other people on that street. What would have happened to any one of those people on the street if good old Michael Brown had grabbed that cop's gun and actually gotten away with it and didn't shoot the policeman? Let's assume, let's be really stupid and assume for a moment that he wouldn't have killed the policeman, who would have then just grabbed his shotgun in the SUV and cut him down. But let's think for a minute. No, the cop would have suddenly had some wave of joy over him and went, oh, Michael Brown isn't that bad. He's a nice guy. I'll let him have my gun. It's an early Christmas present, Michael. Have a nice day. What would Michael then do with the other unarmed people on the street, black, white, Arab, or otherwise? Well, what do you think he'd do? He just went in, had no respect for a store owner, took a handful of cigarillos like they were his, which they weren't. Has anybody ever asked the question, did Michael Brown have a job? I didn't hear it. No. Months and months and months on this story, the news covered it. Wolf Blitzer went 24/7 with his stories. Anybody? Did he have a job? No. Was he a church-going boy? Did he contribute to society in any freaking way whatsoever? No. Nope, not a word of that. So tell me, why did that Black Life matter after grabbing that policeman's gun in his SUV? You explain that to me, and maybe I can start to make some sort of semblance of the argument on the other side. But right now, I don't see it. Well, CEO of Starbucks, yes, good old Starbucks coffee, Howard Schultz, acknowledged that he was wading into potentially dangerous territory by holding a series of forums for frank discussions with his employees about race. For the latest, he came to California's African American Museum here, inviting hundreds of Starbucks baristas, managers, and other workers to listen to each other's stories just Monday about how skin color and ethnicity has affected their lives, as well as how they treat customers. The meeting showed how racial strife over the summer in Ferguson, Missouri, after the police shooting of Michael Brown and subsequent protests in other cities involving minorities are playing out not only in government and society, but in corporate America as well. Quote, whether we want to admit it or not, we all have unconscious biases, Schultz said, and yes, we do. Therefore, I submit to the PC world, you can't have equality. You can't. You think about that for a second. I was born in Victoria, British Columbia, little island off the western tip of Canada there. Yeah. I had my mom, and I had my family, and I had my little brother years later, and I had my whole life and experiences. Can anybody from the East Coast relate to that? Maybe generally, but not specifically. And what about my economic status? That plays a big part, doesn't it? Well, let's face it, we weren't all the son or daughter of the Starbucks CEO, were we? No. He didn't send us to Harvard, did he? No. Hell, he didn't even send us to private schools, did he? No. He didn't buy us that $80,000 car for our 16th birthday, did he? No. But all the things I just mentioned, Schultz did do for his children. So I submit to you, color completely notwithstanding, how in any way, shape, or form, or reality, can we sit there and strive for this mystical reality of equal? You can't. Sorry, you can't. And in everything I just laid out there about the CEO of Starbucks and his kids, and those life experiences they had versus the ones I didn't, those things actually make you a different person. They go to your character. I was extremely proud of the fact that I saved up when I was 14 and a half years old till I was 16 years old because I was going to buy myself a car, and I did. Yes, I did. And no, it wasn't an $80,000 Porsche. No, it wasn't. It was a $1,600 Plymouth Scamp or something stupid. Yeah. Canary yellow with a white leather top. It was a rag top. It was a box, a boat. It was nasty. But thinking back on it, that was the greatest car on the planet. And I bought it with my own money. Do you think there's a certain level of pride there that I had that Schultz's kid really didn't? Oh, sure, he got the latest and greatest Porsche with all the bells and whistles and made all the girls excited and all that good stuff. But do you think he had that sense of self that I got from my experience? I don't think so. And I'll bet you he will even admit to that. Because, of course, like with everything, I'm right. So there you go. Yeah. Well, the CEO said he felt very restless and very concerned after Ferguson and the other events, including the officer-involved shooting near a Starbucks store in Milwaukee more recently. About 40% of Starbucks' 150,000 employees in the U.S. are minorities, Schultz said, and we had to do something. There would be no ignoring it or being a bystander, he said. And as a business, Starbucks is a unique position to act, having always strived to be viewed as more than a coffee house chain. And if you want to talk statistics, people, only 40% of Starbucks employees are minorities. Okay? That's significantly less than the 79 to 83% currently of minorities who are serving in our penitentiaries across this country. So, from those two statistics, I would submit that black people don't like working. You see what I mean? How statistics can support pretty much anything you want to say? There it is. Well, he started with his first forum on race in Starbucks' hometown in Seattle back in December. The decision brought forth such an emotional outpouring that Schultz has gone on to hold similar meetings in Oakland, New York, and in the wake of Ferguson, St. Louis. At the meeting there, Schultz talked about how the civil rights movement of the 1960s affected him growing up. He showed an extended video clip of Robert F. Kennedy talking about race rather than the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Mostly, though, he just listened as his employees took the microphone to pour out their stories over 3 hours. There were tears, poignancy, and even a few moments of levity. A biracial employee talked about the difficulty of not feeling accepted into either black or white culture. It's an interesting conundrum. A woman also struggled with expressing her gratitude for not now having a job and a new life after being a homeless mother. A worker said her partner is a police officer and she worries about her safety every time she goes on shift with her gun and badge. Indeed, Schultz has been drawing police into the discussion. He said he has met with Police Commissioner William Bratton in New York and Police Chief Charles Beck in Los Angeles. There was hope. The discussions repeatedly turned to talk about bridging the racial divide with Starbucks employees, whom it refers to as, quote, partners. Yeah, and also to how it views its customers. We need to learn how to embrace the diversity in our stores, said Eric Taylor, a district manager and 19-year employee based in Orange County, California. Do our partners reflect the community that we serve, he asked. Heather Crawford, who works in a Starbucks store in Hawthorne, California, said inclusiveness was one of the features she loves most about the chain, and the customers love to see familiar faces. Okay, thanks, Heather. That doesn't... Yeah, whatever. Kelly Grass from a Los Angeles store cautioned that prejudice and discrimination are rooted in making assumptions about others. You assume so many things about them just by looking at them, she added. You have to throw it out the window. And so it went. Schultz vowed that the action eventually would result from the outpouring. He urged everyone to think deeply about what they had heard and said that he was sure that the discussion should strike a chord with everyone. In every city we've had these meetings, there has been a tremendous amount of learning, he says. It's been a true level of compassion about what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. And I would kind of further submit that it's important on a couple of levels here. This is a CEO of a corporation. You know, his job is to go out and make the most money for the shareholder and keep that company healthy and moving on into the future. That's his job. That's what he does. He's the captain of the ship. For him to do something like this, well, this says something to me. And it's not just saying anything negative, because, you know, good old Crash Talk likes to pull out the negative out of everything. But this sense here, he's actually doing something that I think is constructive. He's opening up a dialogue with people. And granted, these are only people in his company and not all of them. I mean, he didn't go and do these to every one of the 150,000 employees they have. He just did it in a number of major cities. But he's opening up a dialogue, and that needs to be going on, people. You're never going to have equality, so quit trying to push that through your Supreme Courts. You're never going to have, if your culture... Here's another problem. If your culture is still teaching the slave mentality, you're destined to remain slaves forever. Even hundreds of years after the slavers have all died out, which is where we are now, you're still singing the song. Now, you can sit there and say that that's part of your history and part of your culture. Sure. Go have a National Slave Day or something then, and go have a parade and celebrate being a slave. But other than that, there's nothing constructive to that. You certainly didn't learn anything from it, and you haven't evolved much past that since getting your freedom. I'd like to bring up another point, too, about Martin Luther King. Now, I'm sure Mr. CEO of Starbucks there thought it was a good idea to bring up Martin Luther King. Well, not at Crash Talk. Because you're talking to somebody who does read books. You're talking to somebody who is informed, Mr. CEO. And 6 months ago, not even, the U.S. Army, and this is a fact, you can look it up, the U.S. Army was taken to task by the PC movement, headed, I might add, by CNN. And they were taken to task in the sense that they were made to apologize for using the word Negro in the United States Army's Regulations Manual. This was just 5-6 months ago. Not even kidding. And who was heading that charge was the man himself, Mr. Wolf Blitzer from CNN, taking the U.S. Army to task over the use of the word Negro. I guess Mr. Blitzer forgot that the great Dr. Martin Luther King and the entire civil rights movement, one of the primary things that they were fighting for in that movement was what? What do you think that was? That was to have blacks be completely legally recognized as Negroes. That's their word. That's what they wanted in 1961, 2, and 3. And that's, of course, what they ultimately got, which is when, of course, the U.S. Army complied and changed their rules and regulations manuals to include the word Negro to maintain proper address of that particular ethnic group. So one could actually say that the PC movement, even way back in 1963, was trying to be fair and just. And look what happened there. Now the U.S. Army gets taken to task, has to write apologies, and change that manual and change that word that Martin Luther King fought to his death to make sure was used with regards to his people. So that whole kind of PC drive, you know, equality for everybody, Black Lives Matter, yada, yada, yada. You see why I'm kind of not feeling the love here, gang? Do you kind of get it now? Can you say morons? I knew you could. Well, listen, it's time for us to go for our, last, I guess, commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about another study that was just released about black girls who are suspended from school 6 times the rate of white girls. Yeah, back in 2.
And you are listening to Crash Talk with Christopher John Taylor, a.k.a. Crash Jesus, on HTLA Radio 1, New York.
It could be 7 in the morning.
Or 10 at night.
In Chilliwack, BC.
Or St. Peters, Nova Scotia.
It could be Michelle.
Or Murph.
Or Jen.
But whenever.
Wherever you order that cup of Tim Hortons Premium Blend Coffee. You know that it's always fresh.
From Newfoundland and Labrador to Vancouver Island, Tim Hortons, a coffee all our own.
You walked into the hotel as a 5. But when she saw the room, you turned into a weird 7. When she saw the rooftop pool, you went to 11. You two should probably get a room. Oh, that's right. You already did. At Planet Earth's #1 accommodation site, Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
The hot new accessory, brows that wow. New from Maybelline, New York, it's Brow Drama, our first sculpting ball brush with tinted gel. Just sweep, then sculpt for bolder, sculpted brows. New Brow Drama. Get the look at Maybelline.com.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
When we arrived at our hotel in New York, the porter was so incredibly careless with our bags. And the room they gave us, it was beautiful. A broom closet.
But the
worst part was the shower. My wife drying herself with the
Egyptian cotton towels.
Shower curtain defined that whole vacation for her. Don't just visit New York.
Visit TripAdvisor New York.
With millions of reviews, a visit to TripAdvisor makes any destination better.
Some said the U.S. has lost its innovative power. We said, America is lighting the way as the innovation nation. Singular insights, superior execution. That's the power of global connections. Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Voted top global research firm 2011, 12, and 13.
We're New York's best talk radio, HTLA Radio
1. Well, back in my day, we didn't have problems with no blacks. Oh, yes. One more time, sweetheart. There you go. Well, welcome back to the show. Special Edition Crash Talk, because Jenny screwed up our Crash Talk last night. Yeah, it's all her fault. Blame her. The show, of course, is Crash Talk. The race is on, and of course, we're discussing race wars and all that good fun stuff. Equality, justice, reality. Right? Yeah, let's talk reality, people. And what is that reality? Well, kind of moving along to something I kind of like to say is, education. Let's talk about the education. Well, a new study out. Black girls are suspended 6 times more often than white girls from schools. Yeah. Black boys are suspended only 3 times as often as white boys, according to data from the U.S. Department of Education. The ratio isn't surprising. Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, the executive director of the African American Policy Forum and a Columbia University professor, says there's been a 2-decade-long discussion now about the racial disparity that boys face in school. But of course, another statistic in the same report was also surprising. Black girls suspended 6 times more often than white girls, meaning there's a larger gap between black girls and white girls than black boys and white boys. Crenshaw says no one made... Oh, yes. Okay, that would be my, I don't know, satanic thing. Something going on there, I don't know. Crenshaw says no one made much of this number. The issue of black girls in education falls between the cracks, she says. To give it a national attention, Crenshaw co-authored a report, Black Girls Matter, Pushed Out, Over-Policed, and Underprotected, that focuses exclusively on challenges that girls of color face in school today. The imposition of harsh disciplinary policies in public schools is a well-known risk factor for stunted educational opportunities for black and Latino boys, the report says. Such punishments also negatively affect their female counterparts. The risks that black and other girls of color confront rarely receive full attention of researchers, advocates, policymakers, and funders. Girls of color are what Crenshaw calls, quote, doubly vulnerable, end quote. Like white girls, they face gender stereotypes. Like black boys, they face racial stereotypes. Girls tend to be disciplined when they do things that are non-normatively feminine, like when they get into a beef with another, she says. Crenshaw says that at the same time, blacks tend to be seen as threatening because, by nature, people assume they're more aggressive. Interesting statement there, and hold on to that one. I'll come back to it. Now, if you take those two stereotypes together in the form of black female body and you have double vulnerability, a 2010 study by Texas A&M researchers found teachers might respond more harshly to black girls because they, quote, seem to defy these traditional standards of femininity, which suggest that girls should be quiet, reserved, and submissive. Instead, black girls are assertive, independent, and emotionally resilient. I'll get back to that in a moment, too. Rinku Sen, executive director of the racial justice organization Race Forward, says she's seen black girls receive a lot harsher punishment. The conversation about girls and schools has definitely not been as prominent as the conversation about boys and color and various kinds of discipline scenarios, she says. I'm glad to see that the issue of girls is getting some attention. Being suspended has bigger consequences than missing a couple of days of school. Girls who are suspended are much likelier to eventually drop out, and unsurprisingly, dropping out leads to low wages and unemployment. Now, this represents an acute problem for African American females due to the prevalence of single wage-earning families headed by women. Given the economic dependence of so many black children on a female wage owner, girls dropping out of high school is a critical socioeconomic concern. Crenshaw says this report and the dialogue is meant to start is just the first step. In the same way that we challenge black males' face wasn't seen as a social issue until researchers, advocates, and politicians began discussing it. She wants to bring the plight of black girls to the national level. That's what will create the political will create the political will to intervene in a meaningful way, she says. Sen also believes that those working for racial justice need to address gender. At Race Forward, we always think about our work as explicitly about race and not exclusively about race, she says. If you want to solve a problem for everyone, you need to look at it through different lenses. Race is just one lens. Gender is, of course, another. Very interesting points here, and some of the things that I wanted to bring up here, okay? This whole thing about black girls being more aggressive and assertive and all that good stuff. Well, girls of color, they're well, no, let's be honest here. They do face the gender stereotypes. They face the racial stereotypes. So, yeah, the numbers are going to obviously go worse for them. But here's an interesting thing, It seems to me, in going through this story, that, black girls are assertive, independent, and emotionally resilient, as opposed to the, quote, traditional standards of femininity, which suggest that girls should be quiet, reserved, and submissive. Now, here's some food for thought, people. Where do you think the traditional standards of femininity came from? Well, I can tell you, because Crash Man, like I said before the break, reads books. The traditional standards actually came from Europe, the traditional standards of which are still practiced today by black and white. Now, we've also mentioned this on Crash Talk before, too, haven't we? We've talked about those British blacks, which are nothing like the American blacks. No. And were they originally slaves? Yes, they were. It's a fact. They were shipped all over the world as slaves. They were the slave race. It's not America's fault. It's not your and my fault. It just happened, and it's history. But those traditional standards of femininity are the same as the traditional standards of being a male, being a man. What is it to be a man? Well, most men these days don't know. Why? Well, you can thank the feminists and you can thank the PC movement, because they have taken away man's very existence, his very meaning is gone. Now, who remembers the good old TV series, what was it, Leave It to Beaver or something? Oh, you wait till Ward gets home. Yeah, well, Ward was the man of the house, and he was the one to be feared and revered. It was his domain, and you were his kid. Yes, kind of like property, but that's the way it was, and it was traditional, and there wasn't a single person anywhere that had a problem with it. Now, what do we see in our sitcoms? What do we see in our movies? We see what's called beta males. Yes, there's actually been a scientific term for them made because they're just yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear. And that's been going on for the last 20 years in television and film. So it must be okay. But nobody seems to understand you're going against not only traditionalism, but you're also going against nature and nature's wiring. Men are built bigger. They have bigger musculature structures. It's for a reason. It's to work. It's to go out and hunt. It's to make that living. It's to support the family. It's to protect the family. Women are the child bearers and the nurturers. But now we're in this age where, a 13-year-old girl, her hole's her choice. Now we're in an age where gender fluidity is actually an accepted term for people that just don't have a freaking clue. Gay equality rights. If you're an American, in my book, you have those rights, period. What the hell are you fighting for them for? Why would you go? Here's a good little thing to think about. Why would you go and separate yourself from everybody by going off into your little gay group, then come back to the government and demand as that separate gay group that you want the same rights you just had as an American before you went and separated yourself? It brings me back to the whole Canada and Quebec separatist BS argument. The French wanted to separate from Canada, and you know what Canada said? Canada said, you go right ahead. You have a good time. Just give us 90 days notice, and we'll come in and we'll close down the Royal Bank of Canada and CIBC and all the other banks, and we'll take our money back, thanks. And you guys go and have your own country. Fill your boots. Yes, that was the great Pierre Trudeau that told them that. Yes, it was. And you want to know something funny? He was French. He was a French Canadian. And that's what he told Quebec to do back in 1977. You want your own country? Pfft, bye-bye. You have it. If you're not with us Canadians, you're New France or whatever the heck you want to call yourself. But we're taking our money, and we're taking our infrastructure, and we're taking our resources because they're ours. But you go have a good time. Well, you see how far that got. And now you're probably sitting there going, well, Crash, they're getting Supreme Court decisions left, right, and center for gay marriage in 37 states now. Well, actually, you know what? Go do some reading, because Crash does some reading. Only 4 of those states have actually voted that in. Those 33 other states are just following the submission lead by the federal Supreme Court. That's all they're doing. They haven't gone to a vote. The people of those states have not voted for gay marriage. They're not behind you. They're just not. Go look it up. And now the pendulum is starting to swing the other way, isn't it? Yes. Now it's not so cool to be gay or lesbian. So now what's reared its ugly head? Well, now there's completely new abominations they've made up, like gender fluidity. Well, I'm going to be heterosexual today, and tomorrow I'm going to be gay, and then the third day I'm going to choose something else because, yes, I'm an alien or something. Here's news for you, you gender fluid people. You've either got a penis or you got a vagina. And nature dictates that that penis goes into the vagina, or that vagina gets a penis in it. And unless you're willing to change that, you're not going to change much else. Oh, but wait. Now we've got the transgenders. Yes, I want my vagina to be a penis. Well, thanks to technology, we've just got the thing for you. We'll make you a penis. Oh, and you've got a penis and you don't want that? We'll dig it out for you and make you a vagina. We can do that now. We have the technology. So we're going ahead, aren't we? Just like human cloning. Well, we can do it, so yeah, let's do it. We've got the technology. Never ask why we should be doing something. Let's just do it. Well, again, if you look at history, you'll know how all of those situations turned out. And if you think they're good, you've got another thing coming. And if you expect other people to swallow that you don't like your penis anymore and you want a vagina just because you can, or that you're some tertiary sex that, science hasn't heard of, and you want to go be a third alien sex or whatever it is, you go ahead. But don't expect any rights. Don't expect any special treatment. We're all equal. The whole thing is circular and silly, isn't it? I think it's circular and silly. Yes, I do. And you can quote me. I'll go on record as saying that. I think it's circular and indeed silly. So we're going to go for our last commercial break, and when we come back, I'm just going to do kind of a wrap and close here, and get ready for a fun show like coffee and cigarettes, hopefully with no Sweet tea all over the mixer. Back in 2.
And you are listening to Crash Talk with Christopher John Taylor, a.k.a. Crash Jesus, on HTLA Radio 1, New York.
What if there was a coffee that was sourced from some of the world's most renowned growing regions, abundant with rich, fertile soil? What if this coffee was picked at the perfect moment, then packed meticulously and shipped carefully to be roasted under the watchful eye of coffee masters? What if it was expertly blended, ground, and sealed, ensuring maximum flavor and freshness, then brewed in small batches and always served fresh within 20 minutes, just the way you like it? Now, what if this coffee just happened to be the coffee you already know and love? Tim Hortons. Always fresh. Always great tasting coffee.
You walked into the hotel as a 5. But when she saw the room, you turned into a weird 7. When she saw the rooftop pool, you went to 11. You two should probably get a room. Oh, that's right. You already did. At Planet Earth's #1 accommodation site, Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
Some said the U.S. has lost its innovative power. We said America is lighting the way as the innovation nation. Singular insights, superior execution. That's the power of global connections. Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Voted top global research firm 2011, 12, and 13.
When we arrived at our hotel in New York, the porter was so incredibly careless with our bags. And the room they gave us, it was beautiful. A broom closet. But the worst part was the shower. My wife drying herself with the Egyptian cotton towels. Shower curtain. Defined that whole vacation for her. Don't just visit New York.
Visit TripAdvisor New York.
With millions of reviews, a visit to TripAdvisor makes any destination better.
The hot new accessory, brows that wow. New from Maybelline, New York, it's Brow Drama, our first sculpting ball brush with tinted gel. Just sweep, then sculpt for bolder, sculpted brows. New Brow Drama. Get the look at Maybelline.com.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
We're New York's best talk radio, HTLA Radio 1.
We're back. Oh, yeah. 33 degrees now in Central Park. Warming up. Ooh, yes. Like a whole degree above freezing. Yeehaw. Now, it's still sunny. There's still people walking their dogs. So what are you going to do? Well, get out there and try and enjoy life. That's what you do. And if it's too cold for you, go to Florida. That's what I say. I'd like to welcome the one, the only Jack Daly joining us live in the Spreaker live chat. Good to see you, Jack. Nice to see you back on there. And you've missed a heck of a show, unless you've been here all along and haven't said anything. We're doing the race wars. Well, we've talked about a number of things today. We've talked about education as it pertains to race. We've talked about CEOs of major corporations coming out and trying to address the issues, make a difference, make something happen other than the stupid BS that is Ferguson and all things like it. And of course, the opener today, where we indeed talked about, well, yeah, no, yeah. Well, if you did miss it, Jack, go back and listen to it after the show. You'll get a kick out of it. Reminder that coffee and cigarettes will be coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern today because, of course, it's been moved back for the special edition of Crash Talk here today, thanks to Jenny dumping her Starbucks all over our console. So yeah, that's why the scheduling change up there. So welcome back, everybody. It's good to see you and hear you and all that good stuff. And I guess in the final segment here on the show today, I'm going to talk about reality. You know, we've talked about justice and crime, we've talked about the races, and we've talked about statistics in prison and all of those good things. We've talked about statistics in schools pertaining to race. We've talked about Black Lives Matter and how they really don't. And if you're talking about equality, then Black Lives Matter no more or less than anybody else. So why isn't there White Lives Matter t-shirts or yellow or green or et cetera, et cetera? And that's really the reality I'm kind of talking about here. The reality that's being painted in the media, the reality that we see every day out there in the streets, it's not really what it is. It's people reacting to the stuff we're fed on television, film, the news media. All this gets fed and fed. I mean, you know, now I come to America in 2010 from being a Canadian all my life. And I finally come to America, and I'm like, yes, Americans. And what am I confronted with when I get here? I'll tell you what I'm confronted with. Well, what's a polite way of saying it? Arabs, Muslims, all these people from the Middle East that we've been warring with for 30-odd years, who have indeed been warring with each other for thousands of years. Who at immigration, tell me this, who at immigration thought, hey, I've got an idea. Let's bring in a bunch of Arabs, Muslims, Palestinians, and anybody else we can think of over there that's been fighting for 3,000 years plus. Let's bring them over here and see how they fare in our states. And then, of course, what happens? Well, what happens? Think about that for a second, will you? Just think about it. I'll tell you what happens. We get what we've got right now, where you've got Muslims marching in our streets right here in good old flag-waving USA, demanding their rights to their Muslim whatevers and demanding their rights to hate America and demand. You know, that's another thing that gets me, ladies and gentlemen. While we're on the topic of you know, terrorists and all this other good stuff, why is it okay? How come? Since ISIS and ISIL and the Khorasan group and all these people, the Syrians and all this stuff's going on now, all these new factions and new cells. I mean, granted, yes, we funded them all, but that's besides the point. We've got all these new cells, and they're living in our borders. And all I'm hearing from people is, well, it's the goddamn Mexicans. It's the Mexicans. You know, Mexicans, we got to get the Mexicans out of here. We got to, you know, build up that border. We got to stop the Mexicans. I've been hearing that for 40 years from America. Oh, my God, the Mexicans. Here's a news flash for you guys. Mexicans are not your problem. Mexicans are not to be feared. Mexicans will pick fruit for 25 cents a day. Mexicans are not a threat. I'll tell you who is a threat, though. ISIS, ISIL, the Khorasan group, Muslims, the terrorists. How many Palestinian bombs went off in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 60s, 50s? Don't forget the Palestinians, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, no, they're fun, too. But yes, who is the idiot at immigration that's saying, hey, let's open up the borders. Let's let them all in here. They'll love it over here, and maybe they'll stop flying planes into our buildings. Is that the logic behind it? Well, if we put a mosque in the World Trade Center, it'll never be hit again. Really? Isn't that extortion? I'm just putting the question out there. I'd just really like to know. And as always, if you'd like to send me anything, any questions, comments, etc., they are very much welcomed, and you can email producer@htlaраdio1.com. That's the number 1, not O-N-E. Because then we'd be HTLA Radio in Scotland. Yes, Scotland's finest fighters. Because we don't talk in Scotland, we fight. That's right. Yes. Oh. Well, that's wrapped our time for today, ladies and gentlemen. Let me thank HTLA Radio 1, of course, for having us here and doing the preemptive, post-emptive show for yesterday's screw-up. Yes, Jenny. Reminder, 4 o'clock this afternoon, Jenny McCartney will be in that booth without any Starbucks sweet bloody tea. I can guarantee you that, and she will not fry out yet another $3,000 mixer. No. No, she won't. So coffee and cigarettes will be rolling up next at 4 o'clock, top of the hour. So we'll look forward to seeing you there. And if not, we will see you next week for another Crash Talk at 9 p.m. Tuesday night. Barring any Starbucks terrorist interference. There you go. I'd like to thank Tim Hortons New York City, as always, for their support of this and all our shows at HTLA. And special thanks to Jack Daly for coming out of hiding and making his appearance known today. Good to see him as always. And we will catch you all next week.
We're New York's best talk radio, HTLA Radio 1.